Today's podcast is brought to you by The Juke Gaming, Buy, Sell, Trade, and Repair, and The Ripper the Clown Show on YouTube, an unpredictable comic book character come to life.
I've done a lot of parties in my time, but now I've got the biggest party of all at WrestleMania, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas. And you know what I like best about Las Vegas? It's full of losers.
The most powerful entity in the World Wrestling Federation.
Slam Jam Death.
We have a very special guest. We are ecstatic to have him. Award-winning author Jake Aurelian.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's go down the list of some of the books Jake Aurelian has written so far. Living Well is the Best Revenge, which is an excellent title. I love that title. Obama Wama Ding Dong. Yeah. A children's book for adults about the political climate of America. Too Politically Sensitive, When is Murder Too Politically Sensitive? And the one that I'm currently reading right now, Dead Wrestlers, Broken Necks, and the Women Who Screwed Me Over. That's a great catalog.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
We asked you what would you like to talk about on the show, and you got back to me immediately about Matt Borne.
Yes. If you've read my books, you know that I'm a wrestling fan, and a lot of the the 80s and 90s of wrestling, that era is just really still kind of magical, and I think to all fans who enjoyed it at that period of time. Mm-hmm. So, again, if you've read any of my books, there are a lot of pro wrestling references. I drop a lot of references, even things that a lot of people probably wouldn't pick up. And so, yes, wrestling, Dead Wrestlers, Broken Necks, and the Women Who Screwed Me Over. Obviously, there's a lot of people think that book's about wrestling, and I always have to tell them, no, it's just the name of one short story, and there is one short story in there about wrestling, but the entire book is not about wrestling. But that said, yes, one of the things I said I'd like to talk about was Matt, because we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of his death.
Yes.
And he was actually I loved that guy when I was a kid. I mean, I know people over the years have kind of denounced the Doink gimmick, but I think it was brilliant. I think it was one of the most innovative things ever in wrestling. I think once Ray Apollo took it over, it turned to absolute garbage. Mm-hmm. But if you watch Matt Borne and how he performed and just the little nuances and mannerisms that he did as Doink, I think that it's better than anything today and one of the greatest gimmicks of all time. And so it was June 28th last year that Matt passed away. Mm-hmm. And I met him. It was very strange. I grew up loving the guy and watching him, and as an adult still enjoying his work. And at the time I did an article for Buzz magazine called Pinfalls Count Anywhere. It's just like a weekly wrestling column, and when I left Buzz magazine, I started doing the column on my own website, and I can't remember the proximity of the time frame, but Matt at some point I got an email from somebody, and I didn't know who it was. And the email was basically, I had done an article about the series of matches he did with Kurt Hennig. And I think King of the Ring 93 maybe? And just how wonderful and kind of underappreciated those matches are. And so I got an email from this guy, and he signed it Matt, and it was saying, thank you for, I ran across the articles, thank you for bringing back memories of my matches with my good friend. And I could not figure out, I hadn't just posted those articles. It had been a year or so. So it took me a little while to put two and two together, what he's referring to and who this is. Yeah. And so I emailed him back, and we started communicating, and he loved my work, and that was really cool for me as an aspiring writer to know that somebody that I loved as a kid enjoyed my work.
What kind of effect does that have when you think of Doink the Clown, a guy who's in this world conglomerate, the World Wrestling Federation, and he gets every day I love your matches, I love your matches, but for him to sit down and read your article and then contact you and thank you for bringing back those special memories, that's really cool to think, because we think of these guys as superheroes.
Yeah, I know, and it was very special for me. Yeah. To get an email from somebody that I had admired, praising my work and that I had touched him in some way. And so we emailed for a while, and then we lost track of each other. And then through the miracles or evils, however you want to describe Facebook, we reconnected on there. And I guess and you know what, he had actually sent me some signed stuff too. So I knew that it was him, even though part of me was kind of, so when we connected on Facebook, I believe one of my first emails to him was, "Do you remember me? I'm blah, blah, blah." And he was like, "Yeah, I remember you." And so at that point in time, it was when there was still a little doubt, with the internet, you never knew who you were getting emails from. But it was, I realized at that point that it was him. And so it was around the time that we became really, I guess you could say, good friends, around the time that WWE did something where they brought back Doink, and it was.
Was it the gimmick battle royal?
No,
that was WrestleMania 15.
Yeah, it was after they had used Matt, because at some point they used Matt again, and then that was his email, Matt again, but they used Matt again as Doink for like one time, and then after that point, maybe a year or so later, all of a sudden they had Doink come back and it wasn't him, and I emailed him about that, and I said that I'm kind of disgusted that they would use you last year but not use you now. And he was like, "Would you do me a favor? I know you've always been a fan of my work. Would you mind writing WWE for me and telling them this for me? Because I would love to work for them again." And I knew ultimately that WWE would not listen to me. I mean, I'm sure they get millions of emails a week, but out of my respect for him, I was like, "Sure, I'll do this for you." So I wrote an email to them and I sent it to him, and he was like, he emailed me back, and I can say this now. He's like, "Don't tell anyone I wrote this to you," but he's like, "You made me cry." He's like, "Your words about my career made me cry," and he's like, "I'm not joking." And we had a couple very quick conversations over the phone throughout the years, but at this point he was like, "Give me your phone number, I want to call you." And I had a feeling I knew what he was going to call me about, and so I gave him my number, and he ended up calling me, and he was like, I want you to write my book. And
wow, what an honor.
Yeah. And he was like, "No," he's like, "If you could write 2 paragraphs about my career and have it sound that good," he's like, "You're who I want to write the book." And he's like, he told me he had like maybe a couple people working on it from time to time. That's something he was working on doing, but he said it wasn't, whoever he was working with, it just wasn't working out. And so he was like, he's like, "You're the guy to do it."
That tells you the nature of the business, to have Matt Borne want you to contact WWE, because you think it's because they thought of the gimmick as disposable? Because when they did the thing with the new Razor, the new Diesel, was that around the time where they were just like, "These are our characters, we can have anybody play them"?
I think so. And I remember, and I can't remember, I mean, I had many conversations with Matt, and a lot of what he told me really, really inspired me and really helped me out during a time when I was kind of struggling with whether or not I should continue with my writing or not. And I mean, I remember him just expressing frustration over the fact that they pretty much just bastardized what he had created and had continued to bastardize it throughout the years. And he was really frustrated with that. And I know that he appreciated WWE a lot because they put him through rehab, and he was point blank that he probably wouldn't be alive without them. But at the same time, he wasn't happy with what they were doing with the character that he obviously really loved.
Now, was he under the makeup when they did the heel Doink? Was that him?
Yes.
Okay.
He was heel, and then he did maybe 1 or 2 segments as the face Doink. And then after that point, it was it was a couple people, and then Ray Apollo took it.
Because I know the feud that he was having with Crush at the time, I absolutely loved the heel gimmick.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, it was beyond creepy, and it was so entertaining because I don't think they realized how much talent that he had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're like, this is just a gimmick for kids, stuff like that. And then you'd notice after a while on commentary, somebody would always bring it up, whether it was Jim Ross. This individual has definitely got, more talent than what we actually could see. Because he was doing moves that people were like, wait, this is backstage. They're like, oh, this is just a fluff gimmick.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing good matches.
He's getting that unfortunate, like the Kurt Cobain, like after his death, people are finally coming out about how brilliant Matt Borne was. It's so sad and unfortunate that happens, but yeah, his heel stuff was really good.
Yeah, it was, and the funny thing is, like, WWE, they used that gimmick for so long, and they brought different people out. And even when the WWE trading card came out, you know how they issued like signed cards? Can't remember what it was, maybe summer of 2000. It wasn't last summer, it was probably late summer 2012-ish when it came out. And I saw it on eBay, the signed Doink card. It's a picture of Matt as Doink, but it's got a signature there. It does not look like the signatures that he has given me.
It wasn't even his.
And I emailed him like, this is not your signature, is it? And he was like, nope, I never signed those.
Wow.
So the Doink card that's out there that's signed is not signed by, and it's an authentic WWE card, but it's not signed by Matt, even though it's a picture of him. And, which is, I know that he talked in shoot interviews and whatnot about how he never got a dime for the Hasbro figure.
Really?
And
I have one of those.
Yeah, I have one too.
It was the only one that had real hair.
Yeah, I know.
It was pretty cool.
And it was, that's just kind of, it's really sad that he, and I believe he also mentioned, again, either a conversation with me or a shoot interview with the game too. Whatever game came out around that time.
Super WrestleMania.
Yeah, it was an arcade. It was a
it was the arcade game.
Yeah. He was in that, and it was him and his, because he had done the work on that game, and he didn't get anything for that either.
Wow.
And it's it's sad that, I don't know, I just find it ironic WWE likes to help people in certain ways, but then in other ways they don't seem to.
It kind of confuses me a lot and it bothers me when you think that they think that because people don't see him as, like, for instance, you'd never hear of something like that happening to, like a modern day person of, like, let's say Randy Orton. Because that's who he is. I think WWF at the time and the WWE, they thought, they don't know what this guy looks like. He played a character. That's not who he really is. Yeah. So, like, he brought up the fact that they did the Razor and we could just have any old schmo from Independence come up here, put a wig on, and there you go. Yeah. That to me is not only disrespectful, but it craps on the fact that this guy gave everything for the business, and they just look like, he was just a character. He wasn't a person.
When you think of 95, you think Doink the Clown.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. But speaking of, like, I was born 92, so, like, I know Matt means a ton to you, Jake, and you grew up watching him, so I'm probably going to dip out of this conversation because I have no room.
Well, because, like, it was funny, because, like, a lot of the things that he did, and you can remember this, too, he would, like, play practical jokes on his opponents throughout the match. Like, he came out there numerous times with, like, a bucket. Yeah. And everybody's like, it's got to be water. It was confetti.
Yeah. And then, if you remember, that's how he turned face. Because it was weird, because it was in an angle with Bobby Heenan.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird that, even though Bobby Heenan was the heel announcer, that they would have him turn face in an angle with a non-active member of the roster. It was unique. Yeah. And they did that same thing with the bucket. Because he had thrown... I can't remember how it necessarily went down, but they teased the fact that the bucket may have water in it, may not. And then like Bobby was trying to talk to him and like throw it on Macho, not on me.
Oh yeah.
And they had a little huddle, and then bam, he threw the water all over Bobby Heenan.
Because the thing that really intrigued me about the character as a whole was, like, even though you knew Vince's idea for originally was, okay, this is going to appeal to children. Well, it also appealed to people that had phobias.
Yeah.
And the guy comes out there, and you're sitting in the audience like, your eyes are bugged out of your head, and then he comes over to you and wants to throw something on you. You're going to freak out.
A part of the genius of it was that Matt did such a good job of, like, mixing it up.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, mixing up the kiddie, happy element, and then instantly seamlessly segueing into, like, a maniacal,
evil,
psychotic, and Bobby Heenan, he did a great job. A
Oh,
lot of the
yeah.
announcers did a great job
they did.
playing that up. It was
Well, you remember the one where they had the three tiny doinks?
yeah,
The
yeah,
dinks.
yes, yes.
That was hilarious.
That wasn't Doink. That wasn't Matt though.
Oh, wasn't?
No. Matt was
Oh, okay.
Matt never had
Oh.
anything to do
Dang.
with Dink.
Do you wonder if, because of, the eventual, because you remember these, like when they came out in like 05, they came out with the classic superstars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To me, and I looked at this because I have a lot of them, if you look at the different variations of figures over the years, the one that they did, like you spoke about the Hasbro, you could definitely tell that they were trying to mold it after him.
Yes.
And then when the other guy played him, there was variations.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the average wrestling fan that tuned in every once in a while would never notice the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
I could
me
because
too.
of his style in
Yeah,
the ring.
exactly.
That gives Matt Borne credit.
Yeah.
Matt Borne, the Doink from Matt Borne could only be made by one guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, it's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the way he moves, he talks. And I'd like to announce something right now. Walking in, independent wrestler Jimmy Carrot
up?
joins us again.
How
I'd
you
like to introduce you to Jake Aurelian,
Hey,
Jimmy.
author.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Author of what? What have you done? man?
Author of many books.
Many books.
Really?
Yes. Fiction and nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
We
Award-winning.
will talk
author.
about this momentarily, but while we're on the topic of wrestling, we might as well stick to it.
Yeah, the reason why we're talking about Matt Borne is because Jake Aurelian knew Matt Borne.
Really?
Personally. And back to what you guys are talking about.
With the, like you said, it's coming up on the 1 year anniversary of his death. I want to get your opinion. I know I was strongly affected by it. I'm sure you are too. With the utter disrespect of not even so much as a graphic on Monday Night Raw.
I know.
They basically just,
They said nothing.
Yeah, they didn't
They
even.
didn't-
The only reason why I knew was because of it popped up on my newsfeed
Yeah.
that day, and I was like, okay, I'm sure they're going to have a tribute of some sort. This guy was definitely a staple in the wrestling
Yeah.
business, and then they didn't.
It's really hard to find out when a friend of yours dies, let alone finding out online.
Right.
That's how I found out that day. I found out online. And it was not, I remember just being in shock when I saw that. And I went to WWE.com. They had a little spread with pictures and whatnot. And I thought for sure they were going to do something.
Right.
I mean, notwithstanding the fact that they had just a few months earlier had brought, I think, they brought the Doink character, not Matt, but brought him out
Yeah.
there for that when they were doing that thing with Heath Slater.
Yeah, the Legends. Yeah.
So they'd used that character a couple of times, but they never mentioned it. They never, aside from again being online,
Right.
they never mentioned it as one of their little tributes. They never did a montage. They never even mentioned his name on air. And it's really disrespectful to his memory. It's disrespectful to his contributions to the business. It's disrespectful to his family.
Yeah.
It's
And
probably because they want to keep using Doink the Clown.
they recently on their website they recently had like those stupid little video pictures they put up there like superstars as zombies or superstars doing whatever.
Right.
Yeah. They put a bunch of their wrestlers in suits. They
Oh,
photoshopped
okay.
and they put a picture of Doink in a suit.
Right.
And I don't know. I just thought it was a little distasteful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one of the compilations they did a few years ago where it was like a online thing where people would vote for the most unique gimmicks.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
His was one of them.
Yeah.
But the clips they showed, as you may have seen, weren't him.
Well, you know what? I will give WWE this, and I didn't see it on the network, but somebody posted on YouTube and I saw it, and it was a video. I guess they did like a countdown of the best gimmicks of all time, and I guess Doink was ranked number 2.
Oh, wow.
And they, went through the montage of Evil Doink and had people commenting on it. Then all of a sudden they started showing the Ray Apollo Doink, but much to my amazement, they made the comparison. It was better when it was
Right.
evil. I don't know. I can't remember if they actually used Matt's name or not, but they made the comment that the character was great
Right.
and amazing before he turned face.
Yeah.
And so they kind of just mentioned the face character in under the context of he was face, but we
Yeah.
really think it was horrible.
Right.
And
yeah. Well, because there for the longest time they used it in the term jobber.
Yeah.
has been always in a negative way because there for a while
Up until the Job Squad. Thank you, Al Snow.
After when he became towards the end of his run, if you've noticed, they used him to put people over, which there's nothing wrong with that. He would, that's some of the. If you are requested to be a guy, that means that you mean something to them, But then when they changed to the other guy, Ray Apollo, he was a jobber. That's all he did. Every week it was. Oh, I wonder if he's going to lose. Well, I think he is.
Who remembers?
Who's going to lose too?
Who remembers Matt Borne's ECW run?
Oh, I loved it.
I mean, and that proved that he wasn't just one-dimensional.
Yeah.
He went there, and I believe it's a little faded right now, but wasn't his ECW run to prove that like the WWF screwed him up? He had to live with being Doink.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was brilliant.
It was Born Again. That was his name. And he had half the face painted, half smeared off, and he was. I think at some point he kind of had like the Big Josh vest. And like half of his Doink tights were kind of torn, and
Heyman knew how to use.
Well, you remember when they tried to.
When people went to ECW and they had freedom to do their own thing.
Yeah,
it was like, especially when you have somebody like Doink who already had that past experience of, hey, this is what I was in WWE. What if I was traumatized by it? When he had that creative spin on it when he got to ECW,
they tried to
could really run with it.
I don't know if it was like at the end of his run or right during the middle. They tried to do it to where they were taking a jab at the WWF where, you remember the wrestler 911?
Oh, yeah.
They had a match. I found it on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there. It was never, I think it was like on one of the hardcore TVs. They had 911 go out there and basically call him out and was like, you stand for the cartoon of the wrestling business. Matt Borne destroyed him. He destroyed him within like 3 minutes, and the whole building in Philadelphia was like,
that's what ECW is built on. The fact ECW was created because of the hatred for the cartoon era.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching Shane Douglas on a MSNBC show. They were interviewing him, and they asked him, "What's the difference between ECW and WWF?" And he says, "Up there, we're selling baby dolls. Down here, we're wrestling in front of these guys." Yeah. So when Matt Borne comes and he's the face of the cartoon era, that was a perfect mix. Yeah. And then he had to deal with, like, I'm Matt Borne, I was Doink, and these guys hate what I represented.
And that was where the necessity for the reinvention of the character came in too, because like when he gets down there and like I said, he is totally traumatized by it. It's brilliant. Like when you have the creativity to take that kind of a spin on it and really just make it the driving life force behind the character itself is just it's beautiful.
Do you think that if they would have done it the right way, do you think it could have been one of those things where, even though after a while, because of the fact that they created it and they didn't know how far it would go, they figured, okay, this guy's really getting over with everybody. Do you think that because of characters, the way they classify them as, why is it that a character, even though Matt Borne was a fantastic wrestler, they never recognized him as a wrestler, they saw him as a character. Do you think he would have gotten over as, let's say, an Intercontinental Champion? Do you think that would have fit?
I think it would have.
I think he as a worker would have fit totally. Yeah. I don't think. The character, the Doink character, I can't really see as anything more than the comic relief or the terrifying heel. Stephen King's It type clown. But at the same time, having given him the credibility of the Intercontinental title, I'm sure he could have run with it just fine. Yeah.
I mean, how shocking would it have been if he had beat Razor for the Intercontinental title?
They were. If you watch the matches, a lot of times they were. I mean, he had a lot of matches with people who just weren't, kind of subpar in the ring, like Kamala.
Right.
But he had a lot of really great matches, say like the one with Bret Hart at SummerSlam, or the couple with Bob Backlund, the matches with Perfect. I think they kind of went back and forth. At some point, they were using it as like a comic book type of thing for kids, but then they would throw him in there and really talk about his technical ability.
Yeah.
And I think it would have gone over. He had told me that he was supposed to wrestle Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 9.
Oh wow!
Wow.
And
that was when they Who did he face at WrestleMania 9?
Crush.
Yeah, that's when
That was when they were trying to build Crush as a star,
Yeah.
and then he did. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it was Crush who was working with either Henry or Finis Godwin, and he refused to do the slop thing, and then they knocked him down the ladder, and he was terminated shortly thereafter. That's why Triple H got over.
Yeah.
Because Hogan wasn't booked on that Mania, right?
Yeah,
they
he
added
was.
him to the main event.
Yeah, that was the last.
He was him and Beefcake versus Money Inc.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, Matt also talked about this in shoot interviews, and I saw a shoot interview where he kind of elaborated on it more with what he knew, but he basically said that he was like out to dinner with Shawn Michaels one night, and Michaels told him, "Hey, you're working Hogan at WrestleMania," and he was pretty new at the time. That was his first WrestleMania, and they were going to do some deal where Hogan, kind of maybe the same thing with Crush, I don't know, but they were going to do some angle where it was going to set up WrestleMania. But then what Matt told me was that Hogan never liked him.
That thing again.
But he said,
imagine that.
And on top of that, he said he also heard rumors that Hogan said he's not working with a clown, and so that's why they did the thing with Crush. But it was supposed to be him and Hogan.
I think I've seen a handful of matches with him without the makeup, just as himself. Do you think if they would have brought him out eventually as just Matt Borne, do you think that it would have gotten over just as himself? Because people wouldn't have been able to.
That's one of those things that's really hard to differentiate because there are guys that have gimmicks, like the Doink the Clowns, who are like, okay, well, he's the clown guy. It doesn't matter what else happens on the show. If you go home and think about it, you're going to remember three people, and one of them is going to be the clown because that guy, he's bright and colorful and he stands out and he's huge. Take away the clown, and who's to say that Matt Borne wouldn't have been a Dean Malenko?
Yeah.
There's nothing. He could have been a great technical worker in his own right. He could have had absolutely no charisma. The gimmick could have driven him to that point. I'm not saying that it did. I'm not saying that it didn't. But if you took that away from him, it leaves the question of where would he have been.
It's just one of the what ifs of wrestling.
Yeah.
It's just because Matt Borne really got the being behind the face paint, the meaning of it, and being a tortured soul, and having to live.
He really got his own gimmick.
Yeah, having to hide behind the paint.
The amazing thing is, and I know that you're a big fan of masked wrestlers as well. The one thing I've always liked about people that you couldn't see their face, they had to create their own emotion.
Yeah.
Now, if you could see somebody's face, their smile, their stuff like that, you can easily tell what they're feeling. If you can show emotion through a mask or makeup or anything else like that with the way that your body language, you can. You're fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially makeup that paints you in a happy face all the time.
Yes.
Yes.
You're permanently smiling at that point. And there was,
Because I remember I actually did get scared one time. I was watching one of his matches where he would come out to the and then and I'm sitting there in front of my TV
and the creepy creepy laugh
and I remember one time he was coming around the edge of the ring and he'd do that little slinking thing. And all of a sudden he'd pop up. I'm like, oh! I was like, oh! I look back and I'm like, oh my god, that is still scary.
It's where you can almost hear it going in the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if he had the brilliance of getting that character and being that creepy, imagine if he was anything else. If he was given any other gimmick, because he was so brilliant as being him, as Doink. Imagine if he was anything else.
Yeah, picture if he had walked into ECW and they handed him the Raven gimmick.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Or to a similar effect, a guy like Dean Malenko. Wow, Dean Ambrose nowadays or something like that.
Yeah.
It's oh man, just one of those disturbing things, man. He would have been excellent at it. I
guess it's one of those things where does the gimmick make the person? Or does the person make the gimmick? I think the person makes it.
The person makes the gimmick.
That's obvious.
Look at the next guy that played Doink.
Good. Yeah.
The person absolutely makes the gimmick, but it's not a necessary thing. Because I guarantee you, when he got his job in WWE, he wasn't thinking, "Oh boy, I hope I get to be the clown."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I guarantee you, they were like, "Hey, we want you to be a clown," and then he was just like, "You know what? Screw all the negative things that I could be thinking about.
I don't know why I had
this
this
work."
thought.
You know what? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You've heard of Adam Rose, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Imagine if you had somebody like him in his entourage.
Yeah.
Being one of the Rosebuds.
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious.
Matt told me that, and I know this is going to sound strange, but he told me that it was Hawk who initially approached Vince about doing an evil clown.
Mm-hmm.
That Hawk wanted to do the clown.
That actually doesn't surprise me at all.
And that Vince didn't want to, like the idea, but didn't want to use him because he knew that everyone would know it was him.
Right.
And that they wanted somebody who would be kind of obscure and not necessarily recognizable. And like when they did Demolition, when they like kicked out one of the Moondogs and brought in Barry Darso because they didn't want him to be recognizable.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he said that's how he got that, because Hawk had suggested it and wanted to do it, but
It's a cool idea, really.
Yeah.
Especially for that time when those kinds of things hadn't been breached to a mass audience.
Yeah.
Well, because I mean, like around '95, which I give him all the props in the world for. As you know, '95 was a terrible year.
Yeah, it was.
You had a guy that was a plumber, T.L. Hopper. You had Duke the Dumpster.
Was that
Isaac
before,
Yankum.
Was that before, or was that the New Generation era? That was.
This was right
was
around the New
just-
Generation
that was
era.
the
This was like right
Initiation
at the
of
start
the new
Yeah.
generation.
I
It's
would
like,
not want
So
to be part
like
of that new
you had guys
generation.
like Matt Borne doing clinics every week on Monday Night Raw, getting these guys over doing crazy shit, and then you have these new guys they brought in that it's like, all right, we're gonna have a guy that carries around a plunger.
those aren't gimmicks, they're jobs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
don't give a
basically
guy an
they had
occupation as a job.
every demographic at that point.
It's
They
like,
even
well,
had a
yeah.
dentist.
Why don't we have an EMT come in and then he can revive the Undertaker and that'll be the biker Undertaker?
Yeah.
I think-
Shut up! Like I mean, like
Yeah.
that's not obviously something that happened, but that would have been one of the new generation type ideas.
You mentioned Undertaker. That's the one match that we never saw Doink with, the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Oh,
He would be
that
fantastic.
would've
Yeah,
been-
and
Actually, that's one of my big what ifs in wrestling is Doink and the Undertaker and Mordecai and Undertaker because they were trying.
Brody and Undertaker too would have been.
That too.
yeah.
And that's why I think the person makes the gimmick, because if you think about Undertaker, that shouldn't have worked. That was just another.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in
Yeah.
Vince's
Oh,
office when it's
yeah.
like, "Hey, Mark Calloway, cool, congratulations. We want to hire you on, but we got this idea for your gimmick. All right, cool, hit me. You're dead.
Yeah.
What?
You're gonna walk out. You're not gonna say anything, and you're gonna be a corpse.
At that
You're
time,
dead. People are going to give you their
WWF
finishes. You're going to kick out strong on two and then sit up. What? I'm going to bury the roster? All right, fine.
WWF had every demographic, no matter if like they had a Mountie, they had a hockey player,
They had Big Boss Man as a police
they had
officer.
a police officer, and a dead man. You know,
A literal
and-
dead guy.
Yeah, so and the only ones that ever really, besides complete mockery, ever are still remembered is Doink the Clown and Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of the work that they put in behind
Yeah,
the gimmick. Like
absolutely.
Undertaker understood that gimmick. Oh, okay, cool. I'm supposed to be a nightmare. Here we go. And
Yeah.
Doink did the same thing. It's like
Well,
I'm
I'd have
supposed
to
to
say
be.
that WrestleMania 30 match was a nightmare.
But so I think that's going to about wrap it up
Cool.
here in the Broadcast Studios.
If I mention one more last
Is that
thing,
the name?
Matt, before we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I mentioned this earlier, and it was a conversation during summer of 2012, and I was at a point with my writing where I didn't know what I was going to do, and I had sent, again, because Matt knew my work and he wanted me to write his book, and I sent him the Obama political book, and he called me one day and he was just like, you know what, and it was weird, just the timing was weird, because again, I was just going through this, should I keep at this or should I just give it up and do something else with my life? And he calls me up and he was just like, I read your book and I just want you to know that, I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically, you've got talent, and if you ever think about giving it up, please don't, because I know that you're going to make it one day.
Yeah.
And just the timeliness of it was just, it was like he somehow knew that it was a period of time for me that was, a period of kind of doubt, and one of those phases I think all people who do things in the creative arenas feel, just periods of time where you're uncertain about what you're doing. And it was just perfectly timed, and it's really what made me continue, getting that inspiration and that encouragement from somebody that I
Just the
idolized
affirmation
as
of,
a
hey, you're
kid.
doing a good job.
And so I really don't know if who knows what I would have done, but I know that had a big bearing on me pushing forward, and that was just, I have a lot of fond memories of that guy as a fan and as a friend, but that meant a lot to me.
Before we go, any plugs anybody would like to do?
I have to do this just to be a fucking smartass. Plug UWC Wrestling.
Yes.
Also, I plug now.
That place still exists.
You're going to appreciate this, both of you. I'm also going to plug right now Trash Bag Wrestlers because one of your favorite people in the world, Dickie Wabash, just made the talent roster.
I know.
And he would be ecstatic to know that that is my PC wallpaper right now. That page.
Yes, I took a screenshot of that with my phone, actually.
That's amazing.
If you'd like to find Jimmy Carrot, look up UWC Online on YouTube. All of his matches are there. Jake, any plugs?
Look me up on Amazon and check out my books. I've got quite a few, and I have an author page. It's Jake Aurelian, Aurelian.
Plugs?
My plug is please donate. We're broke. I'm like literally going to sell my St. Louis Cardinals head.
Wait a second. You can look at Nick Jones and say plugs, and he doesn't go butt plug?
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, take care, guys.